When you've spent enough years pretending you're not starving, it becomes easy to forget what hunger even feels like. Not the physical kind. The other one. The ache of being unseen. The slow, strangling silence that grows between shared meals and separate bedrooms. I used to believe I was strong for staying, for enduring, for never letting the cracks show. My husband, Nick, always said I was unshakable, his favorite word. A compliment, maybe, or maybe just a convenient way of telling me he didn't care to look too closely. But Jack noticed everything. I remember the first time I realized that. It was a Saturday morning, late spring. The windows were open and the kitchen smelled like rain. Jack had just come in from a run, his shirt damp with sweat, his hair wind-tousled. He moved like the world belonged to him, graceful, easy, golden with the kind of beauty boys don't realize they have yet. I was at the sink, washing a pan I hadn't even used. He paused at the doorway, his breath catching like he'd seen something he hadn't meant to. "You okay, Mom?" It was the way he said it that broke me. Not casual, not in passing, like he saw right through my spine. "I'm fine," I said. But he didn't believe me. And worse, he didn't pretend to. From that moment on, I felt his eyes on me more and more. Quietly, thoughtfully, like he was memorizing something fragile. I told myself I was imagining it. And I told myself that again the afternoon he brought home his new girlfriend, Kayla. 18, freshly tanned, cropped denim jacket, and a lip gloss smile. I watched her tuck herself against his side on the couch, giggling at things he barely said. She had no idea who he really was. None of the weight he carried behind his eyes. None of the gentleness I'd seen in the way he once helped me with a splinter, his fingers trembling slightly as he tried not to hurt me. I envied her, not because she had him, but because he let her. I went to bed that night still hearing her laughter echoing in the hallway. My pillow felt too warm, my skin too alert. I hated myself for feeling anything at all. The distance between Nick and me had grown thick and impenetrable by then. We still functioned like a couple, shared bills, scheduled dinners, spoke politely in front of friends, but the intimacy was long gone. He didn't touch me unless he had to. He hadn't noticed a new haircut in 5 months. He asked nothing, not even how I slept. But Jack asked, and listened, and waited for the truth. One evening, I found myself in the passenger seat of his car. He was driving me home after my book club, an errand Nick once promised he'd do every week. Jack hadn't even asked. He'd just shown up, leaned against the hood of his car like it was the most natural thing in the world. On the drive, he told me about his plans to get his license upgraded. Parallel parking still a nightmare, he admitted with a boyish grin. We laughed. And then, after a pause, he glanced sideways at me and asked, "Were you ever scared of getting older?" I blinked. "What kind of question is that?" He shrugged, eyes on the road. "Just wondering. You don't seem scared of anything. But I don't know what's real anymore." That night, I stared at the ceiling long after Nick began snoring beside me, Jack's question echoing like a low hum. I didn't want to think about the reasons I couldn't sleep, about how he made me feel seen in ways Nick never did, about how I began timing my walks downstairs to coincide with Jack's returns from class. I didn't want to admit that when Kayla touched his face at dinner, my stomach twisted so hard I had to excuse myself from the table. And I certainly didn't want to admit what happened the day he passed his driving exam. We went together to the DMV, just the two of us. Jack asked me to come because, in his words, "You're better luck than Dad." I remember how his hands shook slightly before the exam. I held them without thinking. Told him, "You've got this." His exam took 20 minutes. He passed. When he walked out with that triumphant grin, my heart swelled so hard it felt like it might crack. I threw my arms around him, laughing, proud. His face pressed into my neck. Then, the sky split open. The rain came sudden and brutal, a summer downpour that soaked us in seconds. We ran, laughing breathlessly, ducking into the nearest bus stop shelter. No one else around, just the two of us, dripping, panting, grinning. He pulled off his sweatshirt and wrapped it around my shoulders. "You're freezing." I was, but not from the rain. He was close, too close. His fingers brushing my hairline, his breath warm on my cheek. And then our eyes locked. It wasn't playful anymore. His hand lingered on my arm. I didn't move. And in that second, but I pulled back. "Jack, no. This is wrong. We can't." He stepped away, guilt flashing across his face. I know, I'm sorry. It's not your fault," I said, shaking. "It's me. I let this happen. And it can never." We didn't talk on the ride home. Everything changed after that. But not in the way I feared. After that rain-slicked afternoon, something fragile hung between us, something neither of us dared name, but both felt like a second heartbeat. The next morning, Jack was quiet at breakfast. So was I. Nick ate his toast with eyes fixed on the financial news, oblivious to the tremor in my hands or the way Jack looked at me when he thought I wasn't looking. I couldn't unfeel it. The way my body had leaned into his warmth at the bus stop. The way his eyes had searched mine like he was begging me to see him, not as my son, but as someone who loved me. I didn't know how to be around him after that. And yet, I kept finding excuses. To offer him coffee when Nick was out of the room. To knock on his door with a laundry question I could have answer myself. To sit beside him during TV shows I had no real interest in. One evening, when Nick was away on a 3-day business trip, Jack made tea and brought it to the living room. I was curled under a throw blanket, book in hand, trying and failing to concentrate on the words. He set the cup beside me and didn't walk away. "I know you said we can't talk about what happened," he began softly. "But I need you to know, I felt it too." My fingers tightened around the spine of the book. "Jack, I'm not trying to make things worse," he said, sitting on the edge of the couch. "But I see how unhappy you are, Mom. I see the way you look at Dad. Or don't. I made vows," I whispered. "I chose a life. I can't undo that just because someone finally notices me." His jaw tightened. "It's not just noticing. I've seen you for years. Long before I understood what I was feeling." I couldn't look at him. My throat burned. "This isn't fair to you." "It's not fair to you," he said. "He doesn't make you laugh. He doesn't bring you flowers. He doesn't ask how your day was. You don't get to be that person," I said, voice trembling. "You can't be." Jack nodded, slow and sure. "I know." He stood, but didn't walk away. Then, almost hesitantly, he said, "If I were someone else, just a boy who met you at a coffee shop, you would have smiled back, wouldn't you?" I said nothing. He leaned in and kissed my forehead. Soft, reverent. "We'll figure this out," he murmured. "I just needed you to know you're not alone." That night, I cried until the pillow was soaked beneath my cheek. Not from shame, from release. Because someone saw me again. The next day, he started driving me to work. His car smelled faintly of citrus and worn leather. He always had coffee ready in the console exactly how I liked it, a little cinnamon, no sugar. Nick never remembered how I took my coffee. One morning, as we sat in the parking lot before I went in, Jack reached across and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was small, intimate, dangerous. "I'm sorry," I said, "for needing something I can't have." "You're not wrong for wanting to be loved. I'm wrong for where I'm looking." He leaned his forehead against the steering wheel. "You didn't ask for this. Neither did I." We were silent for a long time. That night, while Nick was still away, Jack knocked on my bedroom door. "I can't sleep," he said. I hesitated. My voice was barely audible. "Me either." "Can I just sit with you?" I nodded. He sat on the edge of the bed, eyes flicking to the books on my nightstand. "I remember when I was a kid, you used to fall asleep with a book still in your lap. You remember that?" "I remember everything." I pulled the blanket higher, suddenly cold. "Jack, I don't know what we're doing." "I don't either," he said. "I just know. I've never wanted to protect someone more than I want to protect you." I reached for his hand without thinking, and he held it. That's all we did that night. just sat together. No words, no movement, only the sound of rain against the windows. But in that silence, something between us was sealed. I didn't try to undo it the next day, or the next. In the weeks that followed, we drifted closer, not recklessly, but with a quiet inevitability. Jack made dinner when Nick worked late. He watched old movies with me that Nick would have mocked. He listened when I talked about dreams I'd buried long ago, like my half-finished writing degree or the dance class I quit after getting married. One Sunday, I told him everything. We were sitting in his room. Nick gone for the weekend again, this time to Chicago. I used to think I was broken, I said, my voice low. That maybe I didn't deserve affection, or softness, or someone to hold me like I mattered. He looked at me, eyes filled with something I didn't dare name. And then you started doing all those things I didn't even know I missed. I continued. And now, every time I try to ignore it, I just feel more. Me too, he whispered. I pulled away, panicked. Jack, no. Don't say that. Why not? Because it makes it real. He stepped closer. It is real. I buried my face in my hands. I'm sorry. For the feelings. For everything. For needing what I shouldn't. You don't have to apologize to me. I do, I choked out. Because I want things I'm not allowed to want.
He was quiet for a long time.
Then, he reached out and touched my chin, gently lifting my face. You're allowed to feel.
Even if you don't act on it.
Even if we do nothing but carry it quietly for the rest of our lives. And then, with such gentle defiance, he leaned in and kissed me. Just once. Not possessive. Not hurried. A promise, not a plea. We'll manage, he whispered. We never said the word love. We didn't dare. Instead, we lived in glances and gestures. In shadows. In the language of unsaid things. After that kiss, something shifted. Not in dramatic, earth-shattering ways, but subtly, like the slow tilt of light in the late afternoon. A new softness bloomed in the way Jack opened doors for me, in the quiet be safe, he whispered whenever I left for work. He started driving me more often, making my coffee, walking me to the front porch, like we were two people fumbling their way through the start of something impossible.
And
I stopped fighting it, at least on the surface. There were nights I'd sit beside Nick on the couch, numb with guilt, feeling Jack's eyes flick briefly toward me as he passed through the hallway. We never touched. We never needed to. The space between us pulsed with more feeling than anything I'd ever shared with my husband. Nick remained as unaware as ever, buried in spreadsheets and deadlines, half listening to my voice like it was background noise. One morning, Jack appeared in the kitchen before Nick came down. He slid a small paper bag toward me on the counter. What's this? I asked. He shrugged, trying to seem casual. Cinnamon bagel. From that place you like on 8th. My fingers brushed his as I took it. You remembered. I always remember, he said quietly. Later that week, Nick left again for another trip. This time it was 3 nights. I knew I should have stayed alone. I knew what it would look like if anyone saw Jack carrying my bags into his room that night. But something in me, frayed and fragile, wanted to be held. Just a talk, I told myself. Just one night. But it wasn't just one. It was 3. 3 nights where we whispered in the dark, our hands finding each other beneath the covers. 3 mornings where he made toast and brought it to me on a tray, grinning like a boy who'd discovered fire. On the second night, I asked, "What are we doing?" Jack stared at the ceiling, then turned toward me. Something we'll never talk about outside these walls. I hate that, I whispered. I know. I hate that I can't smile at you the way I want to, or hold your hand in the daylight. He sat up, pulling the blanket with him. You don't need to explain it, Mom. I see how you live. I know how invisible he makes you feel. I said nothing. I didn't have to.
He reached for my hand.
I don't need anyone else to understand.
Just you.
That night, I dreamt we were dancing in the middle of an empty road. No cars, no people, just music from some unseen place and Jack's hands around my waist. When I woke up, he was already awake, watching me like I was the only real thing in the room. "I dreamed of you," I said before I could stop myself. "I didn't sleep," he replied, smiling softly. "Didn't want to miss anything." I cried in the shower that morning.
For the things I felt.
For the things I could never have. And still, I kept stepping toward him. We began to orbit in secret, carving out moments in the day like contraband. Coffee breaks that lasted too long. Quiet dinners when Nick worked late. I started reading in Jack's room at night while he did homework, our legs brushing beneath the desk. He bought me a notebook once and wrote inside the cover, "For the things you never say out loud." And I filled it with thoughts I never intended to share, with apologies I didn't know who to give to, with lines like, "He sees me, God help me, he sees me, and I don't want to hide anymore."
Or,
"Sometimes I think I was made to be loved by someone younger, someone softer, someone like him." One night, I left it open by accident on his desk. I realized only after I had gone back to my room. By the time I returned to grab it, it was closed, but I knew he'd read it. He didn't say anything that night, but the next morning, there were flowers on my pillow, wild, unarranged, like him. There were moments when it nearly broke us. The silence, the tension, the weight of what we weren't allowed to want. Once, after dinner, I stood by the sink and watched Jack lean against the fridge. He didn't say a word, just looked at me like he wanted to scream. "What is it?" I asked. He shook his head. "I just wish you could be mine." "I already am," I said. "Just not in the way we want." He stepped toward me, stopped inches from my face. "If he ever hurts you again, he doesn't hit me," I said quickly. "That's not what I meant." He reached up and brushed a thumb beneath my eye, even though there were no tears.
just the idea of them.
"I don't like seeing you walk around like you're half alive." I stared at him. "You make me feel like I was never meant to disappear." He whispered, "That's because you weren't." There was no kiss that night. No stolen moment. Just the heat of two people standing too close to a line they didn't know how not to cross. I stopped mentioning Kayla, and after a while, she stopped showing up. When I asked what had happened, Jack shrugged. "She was sweet."
But she didn't know me.
And I understood, because I did.
And he knew me too well.
The final night Nick was away, Jack waited for me in the kitchen, the light above him dim and golden, flickering just slightly, like even the house knew we were living on borrowed time. "I thought we could celebrate," he said. "Celebrate what?" He smiled that soft, unsure smile I knew too well. "That you're here. That you're not somewhere pretending to be happy." I tried to laugh, but it caught in my throat. "That's a strange thing to celebrate." "It's everything," he said. He poured me wine. White crisp, the kind Nick always forgot I preferred. We sat at the table with no candles, no music, no pretense. Just silence. And him. And me. And the weight of the unspoken. "I read your notebook," he said suddenly. My stomach clenched. I didn't move. I shouldn't have. I know. But I did. I met his eyes. "Then you know I hate myself for wanting this." He shook his head slowly. "Don't. Please don't. Jack, I can't be what you need. You already are." "No," I whispered. "I'm the person you turn to because you've never had someone else who understands you. But one day you will. And this," I glanced between us, "this will become a shadow over everything else." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Maybe. But right now, it's the only light I have." I looked away. I couldn't bear it. "You gave me back my breath," I said. "But I'm terrified of how easily you could become my oxygen." The next morning, Nick returned. The rhythm of the house fell back into its cold, impersonal pattern. I pretended. Jack pretended. But the air was too full of what had bloomed while Nick was away. One evening, Jack slipped into the kitchen while I stood at the stove, pretending to stir. "He's going to notice," he said quietly. "Then we need to stop." He leaned against the counter. "Or get better at hiding." I turned to him sharply. Is that what you want? To be hidden? To be my shame? No, he said. I don't want to lose what we are. I don't know what we are. We're two people who found something too late, he said. But that doesn't make it wrong. Just impossible. A week passed.
Then 2.
We barely spoke. But every morning, I'd find a mug of coffee waiting in the kitchen, cinnamon and all. And sometimes I'd find small notes in the drawer beside my bed. Short ones. I saw the way you smiled today. It made me forget to breathe.
Or,
I'm still here, even if I can't be close. Once, I walked past his room late at night. The door was cracked. I paused. He was sitting on the floor, back against the wall, sketchbook open, pencil tapping absently. He didn't see me, but he was drawing something, someone.
me.
I stepped away before I could see more. A month passed like that. Then came the day everything nearly unraveled. We were back at the DMV. This time, I had paperwork to update. Jack had offered to drive me, and I hadn't argued. It felt safe, detached. A favor. Nothing more. Afterwards, we stepped out into the lot, sun bright and harsh against the pavement. I turned toward him, about to thank him, when the clouds rolled in, sudden, heavy, fast. Then came the downpour. We ran again, just like that day so long ago. Only this time, the world felt heavier. We ducked into the same bus stop, empty again. I laughed breathlessly, soaked again, my blouse clinging to my skin. Jack shrugged off his jacket and wrapped it around me, his hands brushing my arms, pausing too long. And then the silence returned. Not empty.
Full.
He looked at me like he had something to say that might shatter the air between us. I remember the first time we stood here, he said. I remember everything about it. I've tried so hard to forget, I whispered. I haven't, he said. The rain blurred the world outside, made it small, made it ours. I can't stop loving you, he said. I closed my eyes. Don't say that. You already know. Yes, I said, but it doesn't make it right. He stepped closer. It makes it real. I shook my head. It makes it impossible. We could leave, he whispered. Start over. Jack, no. My voice broke. Your father.
He's not your joy, Jack snapped.
He's not even looking at you. That doesn't give me permission to do something unforgivable. He didn't speak, just pulled me close. I didn't pull away. Not until our lips were a breath apart. And then I did.
Stop, I said.
This can't happen. It can never happen. He stepped back like I'd struck him. I'm sorry, I said, my hand shaking. You make me feel like the woman I used to be, like someone worth being noticed. But this isn't a movie, Jack. This is a life. A family. He looked away, jaw tight. We can't keep doing this, I added. And for once, he didn't fight me. He just nodded. I'll always love you, he said, even if I can't say it again. In the days that followed, we returned to a kind of silence. Not cold, just careful, intentional. But every so often, when Nick left the room, Jack and I would share a glance that said everything we couldn't. When he brought me coffee, our fingers would brush for a second too long. When I walked into a room, he would straighten like the air changed. He began to draw more.
Paint more.
He said it helped, that it gave his feelings a place to go. Sometimes I wondered if I lived in those canvases. If I became something he could hold without consequence. And life went on. Nick never asked why I smiled more in the mornings. Or why I no longer asked him how his trips had been. Jack kept driving me to work, kept noticing everything, kept being everything I once begged Nick to become. And though I never said it out loud, I sometimes found myself whispering a quiet thank you to the universe. Not for the situation, but for the feeling, for knowing, if only for a moment, what it was like to be truly loved.
By someone who saw me.
Even when he shouldn't have.